In the midst of a broken world, what is your response? In the midst of a broken world, what is your response? What is your response? If you just click on Facebook or if you read the paper, you see the kind of struggle and brokenness that is plaguing our world today. You don't have to look very far to see all the different issues that are going on in our world today. What is our response to those issues? Just kind of going through a number of issues right now facing our world. Terrorism, world hunger, violence, especially in the city of Chicago. Oh my goodness. Homelessness, not in another state or in another city, but even right here in the 10. Local poverty. Let me expand on this one real quick. Local poverty. Did you know there are 23,000 people living in poverty in the 10? The 10, I'm not talking about the conference, the 10, like the sports conference. I'm talking about 10 towns right around us that we are passionately committed to. We serve 10 towns. We invest in 10 towns. You don't have to live in the 10 to do that, but this is the footprint that we are focused on. And we've been saying we're going to go deep. We're going to go deeper than we've ever gone before in serving and loving and restoring the 10. 23,000 people in the 10 alone are living under the poverty line. Now, I'm no mathlete, all right, but I did some math, and this is what made it very real to me. If you were to understand how many people that really is, that means you would need to fill up every seat in here 33 times. I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about right now if you were to turn your head and see every single seat in this auditorium occupied with a person in it, and they're living under the poverty line. Now do that 32 more times. Exit them, exit an entirely new, enter in a new crowd. 33 times. I mean, think about that. That is right here among us. In many ways, those living under the poverty line in our communities are invisible. In many ways, you work with them, you hang out with them, you see them, but over 23,000 people in the 10. Now, 50% of them are students in our schools. In the midst of a broken world, what is your response? If you have a Bible with you, you're going to need it. We're in Luke 10 today. And we're looking at a famous passage, really a famous story that Jesus told, Luke chapter 10. If you have a mission Bible with you, that's page 725. The story I'm going to talk about today is a story I would argue we need to read it and reflect on it every year, if not every month. It's a story that redefines neighbor. It's a story that increases and has the capacity to expand our love. In many ways, when we read this story, we take our definition of love and we throw it out and we start with a brand new definition. It's a story that bothers me. It's a story that says how often you and I crop out those people, yet Jesus cropped them in. It's a story where Jesus indicted the indifferent. It's a story where the hero was the most unlikely hero of all. Luke chapter 10, it's a story where eventually two words were put together that no first century Jew ever imagined would be put together. The word good and the word Samaritan. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. We're not going to get through all of it today, but we're going to look at just a few verses of it. And we're going to start at verse 29. Now, as I read this, I'm going to ask for you guys to try something. All right? I want you to try to multitask on something. I want you to keep one eye or one ear on the story, and I'd love for you to try to keep one eye or one ear on the cross. I started doing this a few years ago, and I read this story. Pastor Tim Keller, he has a quote about this. He said, "Before we can become a good neighbor, we need a good neighbor." And the reality is this, is in many ways, when you understand the Gospels and read what Jesus was talking about, there is so much foreshadowing going on. So what would it look like for you and I today to keep one eye on the story and one eye on the cross? I believe when you do that, you're going to see all kinds of connectedness within this story, pointing towards the good neighbor, the greatest neighbor that there ever was, Jesus Christ, who crossed the road for your rescue. For your rescue. Verse 29, here we go. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" This is kind of the big question that led into the story. And who is my neighbor? Let's say that on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. And who is my neighbor? Francie did it better than anyone. Here, let's do it again. 1, 2, 3. And who is my neighbor? Right? And who is my neighbor? He was trying to justify his inaction. And this desire to justify our inaction is not a new thing. As I was reading through this, oftentimes I'm reflecting on my desire to justify my inaction. Maybe I ask it in different words, but I'm asking the same question. Well, Jesus, am I supposed to love those people? Now, are those people my neighbor too? They're surely not my neighbor, right? I mean, this is what I do. This is what, and many times we do, this desire to justify our inaction. It's an ancient thing. We see it appearing in our lives. We see it certainly appearing here. We see it appearing in the Old Testament. In many ways, this is not a new thing. This is an ancient thing. Verse 30, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest, a who? Say it with me, a priest, all right? A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side, all right? Passed by on the other side. So to a Levite, a who? Good job, a Levite. When he came to the place and saw him, so he also saw him, he did the same thing. He passed by on the other side. So the audience Jesus is telling the story to, this one guy was an expert of the law, and I don't know exactly who else was surrounding listening to this, but if you were a Jew, certainly if you were an expert of the law, in this moment, your facial expression changes. As Jesus adds this element of the story, this guy is saying, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Trying to justify his inaction, trying to move in the borders of his love, right? Jesus tells this story, and his facial expression must have changed. Because in their context, the priest and the Levite, they were the pros. They were the professionals at loving God. They were the professionals at really doing what God would expect. And here Jesus is saying, those that you expect to do the thing that God would have them to do, quite frankly, pass right by. They move right by. I believe in this moment, Jesus is indicting the indifferent. In this moment, he is indicting the indifferent. Instead of making a difference, they chose indifference. It did not move them. Their action and their sight, these things were very disconnected in this moment. Verse 33, these next three words, they certainly did not expect to hear either. But a Samaritan. I want you to say that phrase with me. But a Samaritan. But a Samaritan. As he traveled, guess what? He came where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. Check it out. Jesus is contrasting the half-breed, is what they would call Samaritans. Dogs is what they called Samaritans. These Jews hated Samaritans. To the point, it's said that even when they would say the word Samaritan, they would spit. Now, everyone on the count of three, I want you to spit to your left, right? What? No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that, all right? But when they would say the word Samaritan, they were so dirty. They didn't even want that word to stay on their lips. And I don't think any of us probably hate people to that degree, or maybe we do. But this is the kind of hatred that was between them. This is why the question was asked, who is my neighbor? Certainly it doesn't include them. Certainly we should move in the borders and crop them out. And yet Jesus says, this person is the unlikely hero, but a Samaritan. What? Yes, a Samaritan. You've got to be kidding me, Jesus. No, but a Samaritan. Read John 4 in your free time this week and see who Jesus went to and who he didn't walk around. He walked to the woman at the well, who was a Samaritan. This informs, and in many ways we throw out our ethic of love and we start with a new one when we come in contact with the words and teachings and stories of Jesus. In this past week, I'm just like, I need to read this every week. I'm so convicted at the teachings of Jesus. He's contrasting in this moment this Samaritan to the Jews. Now, he has this phrase in here that I want us to zero in on, took pity on him. Took pity on him. I want you to underline that, highlight that, screenshot it, whatever you got to do. Took pity on him. This is a big phrase. The Message translation, I like the way it translates it. Heart went out to him. Good word picture of just picturing what is going on within the Samaritan. Heart went out to him. Again, keep one eye on the cross. Heart went out to him. The Amplified Version. He was deeply moved with compassion. Took pity on him. This is a big phrase. For many of us, we move past this phrase, or certainly past the word pity, which is the key word. Pity, we're like, oh, it's kind of cute, and we keep on moving. This is not a cute word. It's kind of fun to say cute. All right, it's not a cute word at all. It's a heavy word. It's a heavy word. It's a heavy word because of what the word under it means, the Greek word. The Greek word under the English word pity is this word. All right, I brought it for you guys. There it is. And you're like, that's Greek to me. Well, yeah, that's a good point. It is. The New Testament was originally written in Greek, And I don't want you to think that you have to learn Greek in order to understand the Bible. You don't. But there are moments, there are windows when you do know the Greek, underneath it, it opens up like, it's like a whole other thing. And this is one of those moments. Now, this is the word, and I'm just wondering how you guys think you might need to pronounce it, which I thought would just be fun. This is mainly for me, all right, because I just kind of need some fun right now. So I'd love for you to try to pronounce this on the count of three, but you got to do it really loud, okay? This is just a gift to me, all right? On the count of three, 1, 2, 3. That was really good. How many? No. Here's how you pronounce it. Splanknizomai. Yeah, you're way off, John Chambers. Splanknizomai. Now let's try to pronounce it the correct way on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you guys are Greek scholars. Look at you guys, all right? Use that at work tomorrow. And act like you really know what you're talking about, all right? Splanknizomai. This is the word. Here's why this word matters. And we quickly move past it, but here's why this word matters. This is a heavy word. This word means to be moved from your bowels. When was the last time you heard bowels said at church? It's to be moved from your insides. This word splanknizomai, pity, that Jesus used to describe, very strategically to describe the Good Samaritan, is the same word he used to describe the heart of the Father in Luke 15. The story of the prodigal son, one of my favorite stories of all time. It's the same word that is used to describe the heart of the Father. Splanknizomai, this heart that went out, moved deeply. It's a kind of word that describes that when you see something, everything changes. It's a kind of compassion and justice that flows from the heart, not from a religious kind of order or hoops that you must jump through. It's from the inside out. It's splanknizomai, it's pity, and this is the word that Jesus is using. In fact, it's fascinating that the word most often used in the New Testament to describe the emotions of Jesus is this word. And some of you, we sung that song, His Love is Fierce, and it's hard for you to believe, but I'm telling you, His heart has been moving out towards you since the very moment you entered this world. Splanknizomai. He is the best neighbor we could ever imagine. In this moment, He's describing the Good Samaritan who took pity on him. Splanknizomai. What the Good Samaritan saw informed what he did. Now, let me ask you this question. Is there a connection or a link between your sight and your sentness? And some of you are like, I have no idea what sentness means. So let me explain that. Is there a connection between what you see, the injustice, the pain, the struggle? Is there a connection between what you see, your sight, and your sentness, meaning how you live your life, how you participate within the mission of God? The mission of God, the Missio Dei, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. It is not a 1 hour on Sunday kind of thing. It's a 24/7 kind of thing. This movement, this thing that we've been invited into. You've been saved, you've also been sent. My question is there a link between what we see and how we are sent? Or are we like the priests and the Levites who conveniently pass by on the other side of the road saying, we don't have time for that. That doesn't fit within my grid. This isn't on my calendar. And in that moment, does the breakdown happen between what we see and our sentness? In the midst of a broken world, what is our response? What is your response? Verse 34, we see the response of the Good Samaritan. He went, and he bandaged his wounds. He went to him, and he bandaged his wounds. It doesn't say he talked about him. He ran it through his filter and through his Excel spreadsheet to see if it all lined up. Am I convicting anyone yet? He didn't run it through his calendar. Now I'll convict me. It wasn't convenient. There was nothing convenient about this. But he went to him, and he bandaged his wounds. He bandaged his wounds. And a really simple takeaway from this is this. You cannot bandage wounds from a distance. It's obvious, isn't it? But how often do we not even realize that you cannot and I cannot bandage wounds from a distance? He, in this moment, dove in. I mean, I know this is a fictitious story, but this was a bloody, gory story. There was nothing clean and sanitary about this moment. The Good Samaritan crossed the road, and in this moment, the blood of the guy must have been all over him. I mean, there was nothing sanitary about it. There's nothing clean about it. This was a beautiful mess. And I know for many of us, when we look at the Passion of the Christ, we don't want to watch because of the amount of blood on the screen, but I'm telling you, this is the only way, and this is the ethic that Jesus himself demonstrated perfectly. He went to you, and in this moment, the Good Samaritan went to him, and he bandaged his wounds. He dove in. He dove into the mess. I've got two older brothers, Justin and Jason. And my middle brother, I brought a picture of him when he was 3 years old. And this is a picture of him right here. He used to be cute. You can tell him I said that. This is Justin when he was 3 years old. And there's a story in our family of when he was 3, there was a bully in the neighborhood that was 12. And this bully, like all bullies, they just pound on people until someone stands up to them. You guys know what I'm talking about? And this story is not like politically correct, and I don't really care, so I'm going to tell it anyway. So this bully is just pounding on people in the neighborhood. And one day, he picks my brother's like buddy, our next door neighbor. And the way my mom tells the story is out in front in our yard, there's a circle of all these boys, and the bully is just putting it on my brother Justin's really good buddy. And my mom, the way she tells it, she's like, it happened so fast, but there was this red, because my brother's a redhead, a red blur. And Justin literally, as a 3-year-old, dove into the fight. He dove into it. And he just started just throwing haymakers. Like, I don't even know if he connected any of them. And I told my mom, I'm like, tell me the story again. Tell me the story again. I love that picture. I'm not advocating that you jump in and start punching people right now. But this might be what it looks like, where we don't sit there and we just kind of rationalize or think about, like, man, that's really interesting. That person's really in a bad place. But something in his little 3-year-old heart moved his little feet. He dove in. He dove in. Church, are we becoming Gather Church? Or are we still Mission Church? It's a question I think about every day. You know the gravitational pull is to become Gather Church, right? Well, as long as the teaching's really good, as long as Tommy, does my songs I like, as long as the programs are good for my kids. Are we becoming Gather Church? Or are we still Mission Church, saying we're the kind of people that dive in? We dive in. We launch ourselves into the chaos. We launch ourselves into the brokenness. We launch ourselves into the mess. It's a beautiful mess. The mission of God always has been and always will be. Following Jesus in this adventure of extending compassion, there's nothing clean or sanitary about it. Diving in. Are we still that kind of church that dives into the struggle? You can't bandage wounds from a distance. Verse 34 continues, not only did he bandage his wounds, check this out, pouring on oil and wine. So he bandaged his wounds, but he also pours on oil and wine. And let me talk about this last statement just for a couple minutes on what's going on here. Number one, from a medical standpoint, there's something going on. Oil softened the wound. Oil softened the wound. But also an interesting little aspect here, for those of us Bible nerds, I love this kind of stuff. It softened the wound, but it was also really expensive. Really expensive in the first century. Now, this led me to this question. When was the last time my compassion cost me something? Really cost me something. And this is when I backed away from the text this week. I'm like, this convicts me so much. When was the last time it really cost me something? My 2 daughters were at Vacation Bible School this past week. And on Friday was the big performance. And it was quite a performance. And I was there, and I was able to shoot some video, and I was video recording. And there's a few other families in our church that sent their kids to the same VBS. And one family, a number of years ago, they adopted this little girl. And I think she's now probably 9 or 10. And she was up front, and I was video recording her. And there was this moment where they're like dancing, and they just have so much fun. They were turning around, and Jesus loves them, and it's all about like Jesus loving them. Those weren't exactly the hand motions, but something like that, okay? Work with me. And I was struck by this. I was looking at it through my phone, and I was watching her, this girl that was adopted out of chaos years ago. It moves me in this moment just thinking about it. Like where she would have been unless a Christian family stepped in and crossed the road, unless they gave with compassion that has cost them tremendously. And I just want to say, those of you that feel called by God to adopt, it's one of the greatest callings there is, and I salute you, I applaud you as a church, we commend you There's a number of people in our church that are doing that, whether it's adoption or whether it's foster care or safe families. We applaud you. Stay at it. It is an unbelievable, incredible thing that you're doing. This oil, it softened the wound, but it was costly. When was the last time compassion cost us something? Wine, it did something different medically. Wine, it treated the wound. Any kind of bacteria and infection, that's what wine would do. It would treat the wound. So that's what's going on medically, but theologically, there's something awesome going on. Never knew this till recently. Something awesome going on. Oil and wine. Jesus added this element of the story, I believe, to my core, not by accident. He could have said a lot of things, but he adds in this element, oil and wine. If you backtrack to the book of Exodus, which is a really good time, you'll love it. You'll get to Exodus 29. And in Exodus 29, you will see that through the Mosaic law that they're commanded, the priests and the Levites, those that were indifferent that day, to every day within the temple make sacrifices, some of which included oil and, say it with me, oil and wine. And so here's Jesus adding this detail to the story. And some scholars believe that Jesus, with this fictitious story, in this moment, is pointing the contrast between really what's going on. That just moments before they passed by, filled with indifference, they were in the temple, offering up to God a sacrifice of oil and wine. Getting to the point that God has always been getting to. Read Isaiah 58, read Isaiah 61, 62. Getting to the point God has always been getting to is that He does not only want this kind of worship, He wants this kind of worship. Meaning that we cannot conveniently just lift our arms and worship singing Chris Tomlin songs, but that our worship is meant to be a lifestyle. That it is meant to be 7 days a week. That our heart has been arrested by the gospel to the degree that we can't turn it on or off. I mean, in this moment, think how striking that is. Moments before, there they are, offering up to God worship, yet moments after, failing to extend worship through compassion and justice. The thing I want to drive home here is this question. Are your hands raised to God in here, but not extending to others out there? Are your hands raised to God in here? And I hope they are. But not extending to others out there? Do you see the disconnect? Do you see why so much of our culture refer to the Christian church as hypocrisy? Because we say one thing and we do something different. What would it look like, Mission Church, to be the church? We've been saying that little phrase. It's actually Tommy's tattoo. His tattoo is not Jessica in Greek, by the way, if you're wondering. It's be the church. Oh. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if we really said, you know what, we're going to be the church. We're going to gather and then we're going to go, we are going to be the church. Now, I want to commend some people that have taken this to heart. And there's a growing percentage, but there are some people that have really taken this to heart. And I just want to go through a list of some people that I want to celebrate. All right? And if I don't say your name, you're like, man, he never, all right, I just did this kind of quickly, all right? You can still send me an email. I won't read it. But I just want to kind of go through a couple that came to mind real quickly. All right, here we go. Thank you for laughing at my disclaimer. I feel better. Megan Sheridan. She's awesome. She was down here last service, and I gave her this like high five. She runs the Itasca Food Pantry. And I just Googled her last night, and I Googled Itasca Food Pantry, and there she is. Dave Frank and Lynn Duenas and others with our PADS ministry, they're providing a space for homeless in the community. A number of you guys, especially our students and some families, you've joined in with them. It's, I think, September through May here in the community. I think it's one Saturday night out of the month. Awesome. Cooking food, providing a space for them, even getting your kids involved in that. Tiffany Frank, she just started recently babysitting for single moms through outreach communities. Have you guys heard of outreach communities before? Just nod heads if some of you. Most of you probably haven't. It's in Carroll Stream. It's right here in the 10. One of the most impressive organizations that we've become aware of. Check them out. Google them. All kinds of ways to participate with them. But they have a huge emphasis on single moms. And so Tiffany, in her own research, found out that there was a big babysitting need to give some of these moms a break. That's what she's been doing. Kayla Bender, not only did she get engaged a couple weeks ago to the studliest guy ever, man, is she lucky. Sorry, she is. And you're more lucky. But I reached out to her a couple days ago. She's part of this camp called Royal Family Kids Camp. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. Kelly and I were part of the team that got it started, and we were there volunteering for the first 5 years of it. They just hit their 10th anniversary. It's one of the most profound serving experiences ever, and it's for foster care kids in the Chicagoland area. It is an incredible thing. And so I reached out to Kayla. I'm like, hey, I think you're pretty involved in this. She's like, oh, yeah, next year I'm becoming the co-director of it. She was like, that is phenomenal. That's amazing. We've got some people that are running for water, not in the 10, but water in Uganda. And I brought a little picture of them. And one just kind of, we had 6 miles yesterday. I'm not in the picture, but Reed, I am doing my running. And we got these guys. We've got Kids Hope, an amazing organization. A number of us mentor every single week. It's one of the most practical ways to live out on an ongoing basis a liturgy of worship as life. This is one of the ways I do it through Kids Hope. And Tree-Eyed, she heads this thing up, and she's doing a marvelous job at that. I want to point out these stories for 2 reasons. Number one, I want to continue to elevate the vision of being the church 7 days a week. And I wanted you to see that there are all kinds of ways for you to do this. For us to not just gather in here, but for us to go. The other reason I wanted to elevate these stories is for this reason. Did you know I have not asked any of them to do what they're doing? Did you know that? I haven't asked one of them. The only one up there, in fact, that has gotten stage time, it's one of these things that as the church grows, you think the only way you can get something done is if it has, say it with me, stage time? Yeah. The only one is Team World Vision, and this year Reed's like, we don't need it. And I'm like, you're right. Team World Vision, the first 2 years, got tons of stage time because we were getting it off the ground. We're getting it started, and Russ and Don did great with that. Reed took it over, and they don't need us anymore. So I need to do some coaching I got to coach for a minute and a half, and then I'll be done with my coaching, not with the sermon. Here it is. This has been happening over the last 2 years. There is a growing thought that the only way you can really be the church is if mission talks about it, and if mission funds it. That is flawed for so many reasons. We have said since the beginning that we will pull very few things under the mission umbrella. There is a mission umbrella, but don't think golf umbrella. Think small umbrella. I don't know what that's called. I'll just call it a small umbrella. Very few things that we will give stage time to and fund. Why? Because we want to redefine church in the 10. Why? Because we want to mobilize you to find your ministry that you can be a part of or that you can join. Why? Because we believe the only way to reach our full potential as a church is to push you out there, for you to do it. Let us know how we can pray, but guess who's doing it? The person in your chair. Guess who's not funding it? The person on this stage in this church. I mean, sometimes we'll help out, all right? This is really important. Some of you still don't know what I'm talking about. This is really important. Small umbrella. And so that's why I wanted to share these stories. They were being the church, and at the same time, they were never asked to do anything. That is beautiful. Because guess who gets the credit for that? Who do you think spoke to them and led them to do those things? You could say God, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit. All three count, right? It was like, come on. God is the one. What if we begin to say, Spirit, lead me towards my place of ministry? So we will pull very few things under our umbrella. There are 2 things, though, for sure, that we have pulled under our umbrella. 2 huge things that we do every year, the Holiday Gift Mart and Project Just Start. So for the next minute, I want to talk about Project Just Start. In the midst of a broken world, what is your response? Today, we're going to give you a very specific, tangible response. It's one of the very few things we do together as a church. Hundreds, hopefully one day, tens of hundreds or thousands of things are happening out there. But in here, there are a couple things that we link our arms together as a church to have huge scale impact in the 10. And Project Just Start is one of those. When we first started as a church, I was meeting with Principal Negron at Hanover Highlands. And I said, hey, what's missing? What's missing? He said, I'll tell you what's missing. We need backpacks for our kids that come to us that live under the poverty line. He's like, have you ever showed up to a race without shoes? He's like, it'd be like the same thing. Not only would you not be set up for success, but you'd be embarrassed. He said, there are students that show up that way to school every year. Could you bring us some backpacks fully loaded with all the school supplies that they need? He said, I think we need 30. And so we were able to generate 60 that year, and we were high-fiving it because there was only 60 people in our church, okay? That's when this thing started. The next year it moved to 805. There was only 200 people in our church. And it has kept moving up and up and up. And this year, our goal, again, is to eradicate the need in the entirety of the 10 at an elementary age level. Last year, think about this, there wasn't one kid in elementary school that needed a backpack. Not one kid in the 10. Phenomenal. It's huge. It's incredible. We had a backpack in all 50 elementary schools, and we graduated into junior high. We want to do the same this year, and the only way we can do it is with everybody being in on the same page, pulling the rope in the same direction. We caught some video this past week of some that are not on staff, are not part of our church, but believe in the efforts of Project Just Start. Let's take a look.
Over my 15 years of being in this district, I have seen such a shift for our families in, how much they struggle, not only financially, but also emotionally, and that impacts our kids socially.
Financially, they're low income. Almost over 80% of our kids are free and reduced lunch. We have families that live together.
I see the need for love and attention, and it comes in all different forms, whether it's the need of a backpack or breakfast in the morning or a mentor to help them through a hard time. It's just that extra love and attention that they need.
Our mobility rate's 30%, so imagine that, so many kids coming and going, and they don't know where they're going next. They don't know if they'll be welcome. But when you give them the gift of learning with all the materials there, and we let them know that, you can put your name on the backpack, you can put your name on all the materials there, it's all yours, and they just light up. I mean, how welcoming is that for a child?
I think we all have that feeling that sometimes when we have our purse or our wallet or our backpack filled with some of our things, it makes us feel a little bit more secure.
Backpacks have really allowed the students who come to school with very little to really be on the same level with all the rest of the kids.
I'm lucky because I get to see the kids receive the backpacks on the first day of school, full of supplies and everything they need to be successful in the year, and there's nothing like seeing the big smiles on their faces and knowing that they can do it and they can be successful this year at school.
It really does let the kids know that education is for you, and it's for you, and that's the just thing to do. It's gonna make me cry now.
So many of these children realize that they are not on an even playing field. And so for those kids to have this opportunity when day one starts, to be sitting next to their peers and have that new backpack that they're excited about and supplies, so that when that teacher says, let's do this, let's create this, for a few moments they forget. They forget that they're not as fortunate and blessed as they should be. And so I don't think many people realize how much our families in this community struggle.
How cool is that? People in our community advocating for it, endorsing it. It's phenomenal. It is. And we've been saying it's not just a backpack. Read Matthew 25. This is a Matthew 25 kind of thing. Cups of cold water in my name. I would add in backpacks full of school supplies in my name. This is a Matthew 25 kind of thing. I'd love for you to be part of it. We'd love to see you guys get behind this yet again. Last year, we had you go to the store and buy everything and bring it back. This year, we're simplifying that. So all you need to do is just take out your cell phone right now, and we're going to collect all your cell phones. If you just pass them down to the end, I'm going to sell them on eBay, and we're going to fund this thing. Jake's going to sell them on eBay. Now, take out your cell phone for real, because we have a text to give set up. Technology sometimes can help accelerate the mission. And so really, really straightforward way to do this. Each backpack is $25, and that's fully loaded. Thanks to Grace and her efforts, they've reduced the cost down so where we can have more impact, which is fantastic. So it's $25 per backpack. Behind me, I believe, is the number that you can text the word GIVE to. And this is really straightforward. And our band is going to play a song. as you guys respond to this, and so the song will be playing. And so we need a whole bunch of backpacks that we need to purchase today. July 24th, that Sunday, we'll be packing them together. Great Sunday to invite your friends to. But we need to buy them first. And so this is the way that we are going to largely fund these backpacks, and this is the way to do it. If you don't have a cell phone or you've lost it on the way out, you can give in those giving things on the way out. That's another way that you can do it. But as the band plays, we're asking that you guys would respond to this now by texting the word give to that number, and you'll be hit back with another thing, and you can just put the dollar amount in there, 25, 100, 8 million, stuff like that. All right? Let me pray. God, thanks so much for the joy it is to be part of the church, to give with no strings attached. God, we want to be that city on a hill. We want to be known for our love. We want to be salt. We want to be light. We want to be people that cross the road. And so, God, I pray that we dive in, that you'd give us wisdom, Holy Spirit, that you would direct us on how we should respond to all kinds of things. And God, I pray that you would give us passion to respond to this thing. God, we know we can't do everything, but we got to do at least one thing. And God, I pray that one thing right now would be Project Just Start. God, we love you and we thank you for what it feels like and for what it does to our spiritual formation as we join you in your mission. We ask this in your name. Amen.
As John said, you can't do everything, but you and I can do something. And now's the time. Now is the time to carry hope, real, tangible hope in the form of a backpack. Through the doors of the elementary schools, right here in the 10, and into the hands of the students that need them the most, that live next to you and I. We can certainly do something about that. And so I would invite you, if you didn't have the opportunity just now, join me. Text to give, get a backpack in the hands of a kid that needs it right here so that they can have a just and equal start. You know, as John was talking, I was watching that video of the principals and the teachers. A verse came to mind. It was really encouraging to me, and so I want to read it to us so that it can be an encouragement for us, because it's an opportunity to see that what God is doing in and through us here at Mission aligns perfectly with what he desires for us. It says this in Micah 6:8. He has shown you, Mission Church, what is good. Added that part in there. He has shown you what is good, Mission Church. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. To act justly, and to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. I'm so grateful that we can link arms and see an opportunity that God gives us and respond by acting justly. So would you join me in that act? And would you join me now as we pray thanksgiving to God? God, thanks so much for today, for the opportunity to see a need and allow our sight and our sentness to be so close that we respond when you provide the opportunity. God, I pray that you would break our hearts, even as we leave here today and as we drive back to wherever, going to our homes, when we pass by schools, when we pass by parks, we realize, we feel the need. And then we are quick to be encouraged that you have provided a way for us and that you have so lavishly blessed us that we can bless others. We ask that you would move through Project Just Start and Mission Church this year yet again, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for watching Mission Church online. It's our prayer that this message both challenged and inspired you. We hope you will join us in redefining what church could be in your life by taking a next step. Whether that's sharing this message with a friend, joining us live next Sunday, or requesting prayer by emailing us at prayer@wearemission.com. We believe that these are moments that can lead to movement.